There was a saint in the 6th century called Dorotheus, and he was a monk near Gaza, and he eventually ran his own little monastery and started writing down some of his reflections for the other monks. And it seemed like he had sort of quite a logical mind, he may be even into a bit of geometry, because he once said that, wrote that our relationship with God is like a circle in which God is in the center and all of us are on the outside. And then between each one of us and God, a line can be drawn. And the thing is, he says, that as we get closer to God, we also get closer to each other. And also, as we get closer to each other, we get closer to God too. And of course, the opposite is also the truth. As we get further away from God, we get further away from one another as well. And of course, what he's saying in a way is what we're hearing in the gospel. The getting closer to bit is about love. The more we love God, if it's authentic love of God, then at the same time, our love for each other will grow too. And so too, the other way around. The deeper our love is for each other, the closer and more loving we are to God. And of course, we know this is the most basic and important of all the commandments. And we also know that it's the most challenging. It's easy to say that we love our neighbors or we love God. But we also know that carrying out that commitment can be challenging. I heard a lovely example of it, actually a love story from China that I was reading about the other day, and it was about a couple called Liu and Xu. And this young lad, he was only a teenager, he wanted to marry this woman in this Chinese village. And there was a couple of obstacles. One was she was a widow with 4 children. And the other obstacle was that she was 10 years older than him. She was in her late 20s, and he was just a teenager. And there were lots of sort of village taboos about it, and she wouldn't have it. But eventually, he kept wooing her. I don't know if that's a Chinese word, wooing, but anyway, he didn't give up. He kept asking her to marry him, and she agreed eventually. But they couldn't stay in the village because it was frowned upon. So they were living in the mountains, he found high up this cave. And he converted the cave into a home and took her and her children up this big, high mountain to live in this cave and survive just on things they found in the woodlands. But still, every now and then, they had to come down to the villages to buy extra food or to buy clothing. But it was a really tricky descent, and you can imagine this poor woman with 4 children. I think she had another 2 with him. It was a treacherous. So what he did was, Liu, he started carving steps into the mountain. I've got a picture of some here now. Just with a hammer and chisel. There's another picture coming up. And he carved 6,000 steps over a period of 50 years. 50 years, just so that the woman he loved could have a safer journey into the village. And I was thinking to myself, that's hard work. But actually, loving is hard work. We sometimes talk about carving a life out for ourselves. Well, there was sort of carving a life out there. But it reflects the fact that if we're going to get close to God and get close to each other, and those of you who are married, will tell me a lot more about this than I would ever know. Because in a marital relationship, it's a challenge and requires constant effort to make a relationship work. But that's true of all of our relationships with our children or our parents or our neighbors. and with God as well. But it's work that's worth it. Because the harder we work in our relationships with each other, the closer we get to God, and the more joyful and fruitful those relationships become too. Let's pray in our Mass today that we'll never grow tired of working hard at loving other people and at loving God too, because both of those are inseparable.